Good afternoon, all, and good morning to all over there around the world, as based on their timeline. IAC welcomes you all to our 25th session on the topic Impact of COVID-19 on the Global Economy. Today is really a special day to us because it's our 25th session with IAC. This particular program, in which impact of COVID-19 on global economy will be will be given a session by renowned orator, Professor Dr. Ravinder Rena. Professor Rena is a profound academician and distinguished scholar in economics. He's a writer, editor, and advisor with over 3 decades of teaching experience and research. His research extends in various locations in Asia Pacific, Africa, and European continents. He has an independent consulting and training expert too. Dr. Reina is currently working as a professor of economics at Northwest University Business School, South Africa. He also serves as an adjunct professor of economics for master's doctoral program at Monarch University Business School at Monarch University, Switzerland. Thank you very much, sir, for accepting the session. In a very short period of time, you have accepted to take the session, sir. I really thank you a lot. With all our respect, I request Dr. Ravinder Rena Garu to take over the session, please.
Thank you very much, Krishnaji, and it is indeed a great honor and privilege for me to be part of this international webinar organized by International Association of Academic and Corporate. And it is also, I would like to acknowledge the organizers, and particularly Saichand and Krishna and other core members of this particular association for arranging this for the sake of our faculty as well as the students in different corners of India and across the globe. Today's topic is the impact of COVID-19 on the global economy. And so before I go there, I would like to also acknowledge that there are so many organizations that we have across the globe, which includes for trade, we have WTO, World Trade Organization. For different purposes, we do have different societies, but we do not have a organization pertaining to education. So this particular IAAC is working so hard to reach that particular goal to set up the World Education Organization. So I wish you good luck, the IAAC, for that. Now, I would like to give you some outline stating that the structure of my speech would be comprising of the first part of my speech would be on the COVID-19, and then I will also take you to the global economy and maybe touch upon different aspects of economic issues across the globe. I may also touch some pertinent issues pertaining to India and so on, maybe Africa and so on. So that is basically, that would be my speech. And without probably going to the details of, without taking much time, I would like to start by stating about the COVID-19 issue. The COVID-19, we all know that it has started at the Wuhan province of China sometime end of December 2019. That's why it is known as coronavirus disease 19, because it started in 2019. So then we do have, so this issue is emerged from China, but gradually it was spread and it is penetrated to different parts of the world. So meaning that we got more than 200 countries across the globe, they have been suffering with this corona pandemic. Now, if you look at the statistics as of today, the corona killed probably more than 770,000 people across the globe. And the number of people that are infected by this virus is about 20.2 million people got infected. That is a large number. I mean, looking at the figures 2 weeks ago, if you look at it was only 16 million, and in 2 weeks' time, 4 million people got infected by this virus. So you can imagine it is growing, or it is probably moving like a bushfire. So, meaning that there is no country, probably there are very few countries, smaller countries like Nauru, Tuvalu, and very few countries in the world with about 10, 20,000 people as the country's population. They may not have the issue as such, but most of the countries in the world, they got infected by this virus. So this is creating an unprecedented situation for the people in the country, in the world, and also the economy in the world. Now, if we go into the details of this, as I mentioned, that 20.2 million people, out of which probably about 12.5 million people got recovered from this virus. But nonetheless, the active cases that we have today is alarming. And if you look at more than 6 million people across the globe, they are still suffering with this virus. And from that, 99% they still have the mild symptoms, whereas 1% they got serious critical situation like, meaning that about 65,000 of the people around the world, they do have serious probably ICU kind of conditions, integrated intensive care unit situation. So this is what is happening across the globe. And the worst hit countries like America, which has got probably more than 5.2 million people got infected in America, in Texas, in Florida, in New York, and in major cities of USA were badly hit by this virus. And the number of people in America alone died with this virus is absolutely pathetic, and it is indeed more than 170,000 people in America alone died with this virus. The second country that was worst hit by this virus is Brazil. Brazil got plus minus about 3.1 million people infected, and more than 105,000 people died with this virus. The third country is none other than India. So Indian scenario in the beginning, it was pretty okay, but now it is catching up like a bushfire, as I said. So we do have in India alone, we got 2.3 million people got infected, and about 46,000 people died of the virus. Although the recovery rate seems to be all right, but still the virus is increasingly increasing every single minute. Now that is about Indian situation, and then we do have the fourth largely infected cases. We got close to 900,000 people got infected in Russia. That's the fourth largest infected country in the world. We have got in Russia alone, the death rate probably may not be that much. It's about 15,000 people got died, but still the virus infections are climbing up. Now, the fifth country that was worst hit is South Africa, where I'm sitting in South Africa right now. And South Africa has got closely about 570,000 people infected by the virus. And we got about plus minus 11,000 people died of this virus. So this is kind of a global scenario with regard to this pandemic, how it is impacted. Now the countries list goes on. We got Spain, we got UK, where more than 45,000 people died. In Spain, more than 30,000 people died, and Argentina, Mexico, and many other countries, Canada, Australia, New Zealand. The list goes on. So all these countries have been probably affected by this virus. From this, if we categorically look at the African continent is generally the infection rates are not very high like other parts of the world. Uh, if you look at South African case, South Africa stands fifth in the world, as I said just now, whereas it used to be not even 25th position maybe about 2 3 months ago. So, and South Africa alone has got probably more than half of the cases in African continent. Africa doesn't even have about uh, plus minus about 1 million cases in African continent, and more than half coming from South Africa, one country, where there's a population of about 60 million people. So if you look at the per million, the infection rates, South Africa probably one of the highest figures in the world. So this is about the COVID-19. COVID, there are a lot of research has been going on across the globe to find the vaccine. And although countries like Russia, Italy, India, and many other countries, they come forward stating that they have the vaccine, they already found the vaccine for it, and they got some medication for it. So a lot of news we keep on watching in mass media, we keep on reading magazines and newspapers and so on and so forth. But nonetheless, we must understand that there is no proper medicine that was been discovered until today. This pandemic, probably the WHO has declared it as a world disaster, world human disaster, or it's a global pandemic, by and large about 11th of March uh, 2020. And although the virus started a long time back, like I said, end of December, but then WHO, World Health Organization, declared this virus is one of the crucial and probably human catastrophic virus by March 11th. Then thereafter, many countries in the world, they started imposing lockdowns. Now, India, for example, it has started its lockdown on 24th of March 2020. In South Africa, we started lockdown on 27th of March 2020. So most of our countries, they are still under the lockdown situation. Although there are some countries in Europe and UK, elsewhere in the USA, there are some relaxations here and there, but we all still living with this very different, very peculiar kind of phenomena. So, in fact, this coronavirus created a scenario where we are living in an abnormal situation, and we begin to learn this abnormality as a normal one. Now, for the past 4.5 months, we habituated living this kind of life, though we are not used to this life. None of us uh, around the world, we are not used to live this kind of life. But so we are learning and how to live with this kind of a situation. I would like to mention here that this is not for the first time the virus such as this is emerged and threatening the humanity, the human beings across the globe. We do have now and then, there are lots of diseases, even in 13th, 14th centuries. We do have some kind of pandemic that emerged and that killed almost 25% of the population of that world that time. Now, we do have, let's say, uh, a Spanish flu. A Spanish flu, which is also not started in Spanish per se, but it started sometime somewhere in America after the World War One, sometime in 1918. So probably the World War One taken place between 1914 to 1918. Immediately after the World War One, the pandemic has started. So pandemic has started, but the coverage, the mass media coverage was widespread in Spain, and therefore it gradually attracted, and it is named as a Spanish flu. So Spanish flu, if you look at the history, that was plus minus about 100 years ago. 1918 it is started, 1920, for about 3 years period, the virus was persisting and it killed a lot of people. If we look at the statistics, the historical statistics, we understand that that time 500 million people got infected by this Spanish flu. Probably it's a similar kind of coronavirus flu. and so that infected 500 million people across the globe. And out of that, 50 million people got killed. So imagine the situation. That is 10% of the infected cases are being killed. So that means that 50 million people in those days, about 100 years ago, the population of the world, if you take about 220 years ago, we got only 250 million people in the whole world. Now, 250 million people, even in Indonesia, the population is more than 270 million people. In America, it is 330 million people. So the whole world population 2020 years ago, it was just 250 million people. And now, when it comes to the 100 and probably 100 plus years ago, the first billion in this world is we reached the first billion of the population around 1804. That was about 216 years ago. Our world has reached to 1 billion population. Now, in 1927, we got the first 2 billion population. So meaning that in 1920, 1918, 1920, we are not even 2 billion people. But probably we could be about 1.7, 1.8 billion people that time. And out of that population, 50 million people killed by that virus, Spanish flu. So, ladies and gentlemen, if we look at that history, now we understand that the current coronavirus is not as dangerous as it used to be. When you look at the other pandemics, even we have SARS, a severe acute respiratory syndrome, H1N1 influenza. There are so many other probably pandemics keep coming for every 5 to 8 years or 10 years period. If you look at those, the death rate of Spanish flu was about 10%. Now the death rate of this is probably less than 1%. So that is a bit of a relaxing situation for us. But nonetheless, we cannot take this as a light in a lighter phase. We need to take it very serious, and we need to address this issue by practicing certain simple things. You don't need to be an expert, and you don't need to be a scientist. You don't need to be a researcher. You don't need to be an educated person. But we all can do simple things. Simple things will always bring an effective solutions for this problem. So we all know that. I don't need to tell you that probably social distancing is very, very important. I've seen so many people across the globe, they're moving like a normal life. That's not good for us. For example, your life is in my hand and my life is also in your hand. So we all should protect each other. We should always, try to save each other. And then social distancing, probably about 1.5 meters or 2 meters to the extent possible, is important for us. Now, wearing the mask is also a kind of new phenomenon for all of us. I'm also having the mask here. I'm just keeping the mask here. So, wearing mask being a compulsory phenomenon. There are some countries they are giving relaxation. If it is up to you whether you want to wear the mask or not. And some countries they are imposing restrictions, and there are countries they are imposing $1,000 fine if you don't wear the mask. So this is the situation. And then if we wear the mask, if we maintain the social distancing, and probably we wash the hands, we use the sanitizers, and probably by using this PPE, personal protective equipments, then we can try to regulate this kind of virus. Uh, every single day, 260,000 people got infected by this virus as of yesterday's statistics. So that is going alarming, and it is trying to threaten the humanity. Imagine that if everybody takes it light and then probably thinking that no, nothing is going to happen to me. I'm strong, I'm young, I don't have any problem, I have got a strong immune power. I mean, that kind of blind probably faith, if somebody moves out and if it attacks and if it kills the person, and until that time the person doesn't know the seriousness of this virus. So ladies and gentlemen, we have seen the history and we have seen the world that the virus does not distinguish the rich and the poor, and the politicians and the common man, and the leaders and the followers. So it treats every country, every human being equally. For that matter, if you remember, Boris Johnson, the UK Prime Minister, he got infected. Uh, Prince Charles got also infected. There are some presidents died out of this virus. There are so many politicians they have died out of this virus. There's also saying that there are so many countries in the world they begin to spend huge amount of money as a kind of package, probably bailout package to resurrect the economies, and trillions and trillions of dollars have been spent on this virus. Now, some of the politicians making use of this opportunity to loot that money, which was meant for the particular pandemic, and to improve the lives of the people, to give the basic needs to the people. But they begin to take, they put the hands on, and they begin to take the resources as much as they can grab. It happens in India, it happens in South Africa, it happens in every part of the world. So that is why there is a saying that the politicians or the corrupt leaders or corrupt bureaucrats, they begin to eat the money that is meant for the common man, that is meant for to improve the situation. And but the people, those who are eating the money without washing the hands, they are also being attacked by this virus. So that is the kind of scenario that we observe. But nonetheless, ladies and gentlemen, I think this is the kind of perspective I'd like to give for the global pandemic. And we have got so many scientists like Anthony Fauci from USA also giving a lot of his perspectives. And nonetheless, we have read so much about this virus, and we understand the importance of this virus and how to protect ourselves. We all know that. We all try to understand that. So it's like a necessity is the mother of invention. We are in a necessary situation. We try to invent something new to lead the life, and then we try to, protect ourselves and protect the other human beings. So, ladies and gentlemen, this is a kind of overview of this pandemic and across the globe. Now, if we look at the economy, global economy, how the global economy looks like, let us try to understand that. Global economy, probably before I take you to the global economy, now let us try to understand the size of this earth. The size of the earth, the surface, is about 510 million square kilometers land. Now, from that, we got 361 million covered by the oceans, such as Pacific Ocean, which is about 165 million square kilometers, covers almost 30% of the globe. And then we got the second biggest ocean is Atlantic Ocean, which is close to about 85,000 million square kilometers. And then the third one is Indian Ocean, which is about 70 plus million square kilometers. And then the smallest ocean is Arctic Ocean, it's about 14 million square kilometers. So this is what we have. Now, if we look at the globe as such, and then we got probably more than 230 countries in this world. From these 230 countries in this world, as I said, that most of these countries, maybe 95% of these countries have been affected by this virus. Now, together, we have the total population of this world is about 7.8 billion people living on this planet today. So this 7.8 billion people living in this particular 230 countries, they could earn the income which is about $86.5 trillion money. That is the total money that is being earned by all the nations of this world in one particular year. So that is the global economy. Now, 86.5 trillion looks like a small figure actually. It's not a big figure as such. But now, trillion is, one can imagine how many billions in that. So, from this, who are the global leaders as far as the economy is concerned? We all know that, ladies and gentlemen, America is to be the largest economy in the whole world, not only today, but for the past 150 years, actually. If you look at the history, starting from 1871 until now, America remains as the largest economy in the world. So now what America has got actually? America has got about $23 trillion, which is plus minus about 25% of the total income of the whole world is held by one country. So that is America. Now, what made America to be so rich? One can ask a question. Ladies and gentlemen, we all know that there are some tech companies such as the Facebook. We all use the Facebook, and there are millions and millions of customers across the globe using the Facebook. Facebook alone contributes plus minus about $1.8 trillion money to American economy. Then we got other tech companies such as Apple, which contributes about $1.4 trillion. Google is also one of the greater tech companies, which is probably led by the CEO, Chief Executive Officer Sundar Pichai, an Indian origin or Indian born technocrat and management guru or expert. So that Google alone also contribute more than $1.3 trillion. So imagine these, we do have Amazon. Amazon company, which is started probably about 2 decades ago, or less than 2 decades ago. And now the Amazon CEO, Jeff Bezos, became the richest man in the whole world with close to more than $170 billion money. Nobody ever had that money before, ladies and gentlemen. So imagine the situation. Now we got Facebook, we got Apple, we got Google, and we got Amazon.com. These four companies alone, they contribute plus minus about maybe $6 trillion to American economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, we should also remember one more important point that if you look at the R&D, research and development experts, more than 25% of the research and development experts are held by America. You talk about NASA scientists, you talk about top-rated scientists across the globe, they are the one who is having the experts. And they do spend a lot of money on the research and development as well. In terms of GDP, if you look at the GDP as a percentage, the amount of money that has been spent for education and for the research and development is probably more than 5 to 6%. Whereas country like India, we spend less than 1%. So that is the kind of difference. China is also picking up in terms of the research and development. We'll talk about that China a little bit later. So this is what is America for us. Now, America is the not only largest economy in the world, but also largely infected country in the world. That is a kind of paradoxical phenomena that we are sitting with. So now we have America is the largest economy, which has got about 25% of the global income. Now, who are the second largest economy in the world? Which country is that? We all know that China. China is trying to climb up the ladder very quickly, very rapidly for the past 3 decades. So what happened in China? Let me just give you some kind of insight. Ladies and gentlemen, if you look at the figures, gross domestic product (GDP) figures, sometime in 1990, China and India, both these countries, they are having only the difference of $16 billion. China is having more and India is having less. To be specific, to give you the accurate figure, that in 1990s, Indian income or Indian GDP was about $297 billion. And that time, at the same time, China has got $313 billion. So imagine the difference is only $16 billion. Now, China became the second largest economy in the world with about $14 trillion income. Whereas India, for the last 30 years, we could only remain with about $2.8 trillion. And of course, we are the fifth largest economy in the world. But then China moved more than 5 times what India has achieved in 30 years. Ladies and gentlemen, we must appreciate, though we have a lot of resentment because the China created this virus, and we do have a lot of turmoil. Uh, the way Chinese are acting is very aggressive. If you look at those as negative aspects aside, or if we put them aside, what China has achieved in 30 years period is remarkable. China is the only country in the world which lifted 700 million people out of poverty, ladies and gentlemen. So that is a bigger achievement for the humanity at this time. So, which also Chinese products were very inferior products. Even now, we got four categories of products China that produces. If you look at that Chinese products, maybe A category goods they go to developed countries, B category goods they go to some middle income countries, C categories and D categories come to developing countries or poor countries in the world. And if the moment when you buy the product and the moment when you reach the home, probably either they will break, or if it is a cloth, if you wash, the color will fade out. That is the kind of scenario. So we do have Chinese products which are much inferior quality, but they are trying to improve the quality from time to time. And so that is how China picked up, and it raises itself from nowhere in the world to a second largest economy. And it is anytime soon, in the coming 3 years' time or so, China will become the largest economy in the whole world. So this is the scenario. But what China has done, the 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 world taught us some good lessons. If we don't learn from those lessons, we never learn in our lifetime. That is not only applicable for us as an individuals, but also to the countries like India, or maybe Pakistan, or South Africa, or Malawi, or the list goes on. So, ladies and gentlemen, we must also remember that Japan, after World War II, was nowhere actually. In terms of economy, in terms of natural resource base, they have nothing. As you have seen, the Hiroshima and Nagasaki, both of them were bombed by a little boy and fat man, killed hundreds and thousands of people. And after the destruction of the World War II, Japan left with nothing. Japan began to believe on their people. What they were believing is that the people are the one they can remain as pillars. They can remain as cornerstones to build their economy. And then they start in 1950s, early part of 1950s, they started producing some small commodities. And when they produce the commodities, for example, pencil, when they produce the pencil used to break, the wood is very inferior quality, and whatever they produced at that time are of so much inferior quality. But remember that Japanese people, with great respect, they begin to utilize their own products. They think that if we do not use, if we do not respect our own products, then who else can respect us? So just like the same principle is applicable, ladies and gentlemen, if we do not respect ourselves, then nobody else can respect us. So with that note, ladies and gentlemen, Japan became the second largest economy in the world. And now it still remains as the third largest economy in the world, ladies and gentlemen. So they were simply believing that they have a faith in their own things, that they can improve, they can learn from their own mistakes, they can try to improve, and they can become one day one of the leading nations in the whole world. So, with that hope, with that faith, they begin to utilize their own products. And that is why Japan picked up 1950s onwards, they embarked a lot of strategies, a lot of reforms. And then it moved and it became in 1980s, for instance, Japan became the second largest economy in the world. And Japanese products become so special. If I ask you a question, all the participants across the globe sitting here with us, if I ask that we got Malaysian products, we got Japanese products, we got American products, we got South African products, we got a few other countries' products or Pakistan products. Which product we going to prefer? If I ask that question, even though you may say that no, I want my own country product for namesake, but psychologically you'll be immediately thinking that I need Japanese product. So that is the kind of brand that Japanese are created in the whole world. Japan means quality. So, ladies and gentlemen, that is the journey that Japan passed through, and it moved to the development trajectory in about 3 decades' time. So, 1950 to 1970, 1980, about three and a half decades' time, Japan became one of the a leading manufacturer in this world, and then eventually became the second largest economy in the world. And the same applies to China as well. China is the second largely populated country, sorry, first largely populated country in the world, with closely about 1.5 billion people, 1.4, 1.5 billion people in between. Now, in order to feed all those 1.5 billion people, how are they going to survive actually? So that is why from 1990 onwards, 1980 onwards they started, but 1990 onwards, then they have working very hard in order to improve their economy, their living style, and the standard of living, and so on and so forth. So that is how from 1990 to 2020, for the last 30 years, they worked very hard. So that is how the economy also been changed their face. And soon, as I mentioned a few minutes ago, that it's going to be the largest economy in the world. Now, when it comes to the other leading economies in the world, we do have Germany. After Japan, Germany is the fourth largest economy. We got about $4 trillion income coming from Germany. Ladies and gentlemen, we must remember one thing that if you look at the size of Germany, is almost the same size of Rajasthan state of India. Rajasthan is the biggest state in India right now, and Germany and Rajasthan state, they're of the same size. Now, Germany as a country, which became the fourth largest economy, India, which has got 28 states and about 8 union territories, and now we are still sitting with fifth position in the world. So that is, one has to think about it, ladies and gentlemen. Now, so now the India became the fifth largest economy. As I mentioned to you earlier, about $2.8 trillion. That's what the Indian economy looks like. But then maybe we are aiming by 2025, Mr. Narendra Modi, the Honorable Prime Minister of India, embarked some kind of policies to improve the economy from 2.8 trillion as of today to $5 trillion economy in the coming 5 years period. So that is the kind of, a lot of activities are going on with regard to that. But then it is a question as an economist. If you ask me a question that whether we could able to reach that level, even before this pandemic crisis arrived, I would say no, because at least we need to grow. Our economy was growing about 6 to 7% last year and before last year, and we need to grow at least by 11 to 12% to reach that goal. So that is going to be a little bit difficult for us. Now, for example, China, it was going consistently for the last 30 years on an average between 10.5% per annum. So that is how, there are times China grow 15% per annum, but on an average in this 30 years period, if you take, it grew 10.5%. If we grow that 10.5%, then we could able to achieve, we could even surpass that $5 trillion economy. So, ladies and gentlemen, I also would like to acknowledge and uh, probably share with you that about 200, 250 years ago, before India was being colonized, which is the largest economy in the world? Then the answer would be India. India was contributing almost 40% of the total income of this world, ladies and gentlemen. Now imagine the situation. From 40%, we come down to 25% at one stage. Now we became probably fifth largest economy with less than 3% contribution. So that's where we are sitting. Now the history taught us lessons, and we all know that Britishers they have literally stolen most of our wealth, and they made London and other cities of UK as magnificent cities in the whole world. So we know that, and Dadabhai Nauroji, if we look at, he has developed a theory. According to that theory, so much money has been stolen in the name of various things. I'm not going to talk about the details of that. So that is what, but India is trying harder and to move or to regain its position. It will be very difficult for India to become the largest economy in the world, at least in the coming 50 years period. But we can become the third largest economy. Probably China is going to take over the world. US become the second largest economy, then we can become third largest economy. So from our fifth position, we can move to third position. That is possible. So ladies and gentlemen, I think this is what the global economy looks like. And then the other countries, the top 10 economies will go on. Let's say, for example, we have the Germany, we have India, we have Italy, we have UK, Canada, and go, Australia. The list goes on. Now we must remember one point here that there are smaller countries like Singapore. Singapore is much smaller than some of our districts in India. We got more than 4,000 districts in India. Some of our districts like Karimnagar district or Warangal district or Vishakhapatnam district or Elur or probably Ongole or West Godavari or East Godavari district. Some of them are much bigger than Singapore, ladies and gentlemen. Singapore's size is only 725 square kilometers, meaning that in about 137 kilometers, if you drive in 1 hour time, you will finish. So that Singapore, it grew faster in a very sustainable manner for the past 4 decades. We should learn a lesson from Singapore actually. Singapore became one of the top 10 economies in the world, where the population is only less than 6 million, 5.7 million or so. But in terms of the economy, what they achieved in a short span of period, more than $500 billion dollars of money, but the way they achieved that is absolutely noteworthy. The whole world should learn lesson from that. I visited probably more than 40 countries in the world. When I visited Singapore, the Singapore Changi Airport, 725 kilometers area, the Changi Airport, look at that, the size of the airport that they have. And then the Terminal A, Terminal B, Terminal C, millions of passengers coming from Far East Asia, Australia, New Zealand, and South Pacific countries, they come to Singapore, then they go to the rest of the world. So they developed the airport, which is one of the biggest airports in the world. I was been to Frankfurt Airport in Germany. I was in New York Airport. I was in many airports probably, but I have never seen an airport such as Singapore. So such a small country invested their resources in building the airport, in building the seaport, in building the tourism. Ladies and gentlemen, I also would like to mention one more important point here that Singapore attracts more than 10 million, probably 12 million tourists per year. That means it is two times a lot, two times more population than the actual population of Singapore. So meaning that about 6 million people, that's the population of Singapore, 12 million people are visitors. Whereas India, we got 1.35 billion people, second largest populated country. The tourist number of tourists that we receive per year is about 10 million people, ladies and gentlemen. So that we have to think about it. Then how to embark the strategies on the tourism development, and how to attract more tourists, how to make them feel comfortable in the country. We must work on that. So tourism is one of the key areas, ladies and gentlemen. So, so this is what I would like to mention with regard to Singapore. We can learn a lesson from Japan. We can learn a lesson from South Korea. In 1960s and 1970s, South Korea is one of the poorest countries in the world, ladies and gentlemen, just like North Korea today. South Korea, Jim Park was the then president for about 18 years period. He began to embark some reform strategies, economic reform strategies, and then with those strategies, step by step, South Korea tried to develop its industrial base by 1980s, by 1990s. Now, South Korea, Japan, Singapore, these are the developed countries in the whole Asian continent, not India, not China yet. So with this, we have to learn the lessons. You don't need to, most of us, we do think that, ladies and gentlemen, we all will slip. We will be slipping by a small stone, actually. Not by, you cannot face the mountain or a hill and slip and fall down. We can only slip with a small stone. If we could able to identify that small stone, we could able to rectify the small mistakes that we do, and then we can definitely improve ourselves as an individual. We can also improve any nation in this world. So now this is the kind of scenario that has been emerged for the past 5 decades in the world. The world economy is a paradigm shift. Now this global pandemic, it created a significant impact on every single person. For example, if you look at the employment, we got probably out of 7.8 billion people, more than 2.3 billion people are working class. According to the International Labour Organization statistics recently released, and the statistics reveal that we have got, for every six people working, one person lost the job. You can imagine, in America alone, about 45 million people got unemployed out of 330 million people. Now, if you look at Indian side, we got plus minus about 15 crore people. Now, I just mentioned that our population is about 1.3 billion people, 135 crores. And from 135 crores, plus minus, we got 15 crore people got unemployed. So that is creating a lot of turmoil, a lot of problems for every human being. Now, so this is the unemployment situation. In South Africa also, 3 million people got unemployed. Now, if you look at the trade, international trade is suffered. The supply chain, the value chain, the supply side, the demand side, there are so many disturbances within the system, within the structure, within the chain. So that distracted the world economy, and it also affected the global trade. The global trade contracted more than 20% for the past few months, ladies and gentlemen. We also should remember that the airline industry is one of the worst sufferers. We got so many airlines like Lufthansa, Emirates, Singapore Airlines, and we got probably many other airlines, Turkish Airlines, South African Airlines, and Ethiopian Airlines, so on and so forth. So all these airline industries, one can imagine the fact that there have been suffered. Close to more than $800 billion losses were incurred only in the airline industry. Now, if you look at the tourism, tourism is one of the key for many countries like Spain. Spain get about 70 to 80 million tourists per annum. France also got one of the highest number of tourists in the world. So look at that: France, Spain, India, Singapore, and many other countries who are literally depending, Mauritius, literally depending upon the tourism, they all suffered by this virus. Now, we look at the food industry. A food industry, for instance, we all need food, obviously, and meaning that there are companies, there are small scale industries, there are medium scale industries, large scale industries within the food industry, restaurants, hotels, and everywhere. They've been closed down. And the employees who begin to work from home, they cannot go and have the food outside. And there are companies, those who are supplying huge amount of food to different employees who are working, now they have to close down. So more than $3 trillion losses are incurred in food industry alone, ladies and gentlemen. So the list goes on. The stock market on the other side also been drastically affected by this pandemic. So that the stock markets, some of the stock markets, they have been become off. Probably, if you look at the prices of the stocks for the past 4 or 5 months, they've been worst hit, ladies and gentlemen. And Dow Jones, if you look at the New York Stock Exchange and Bombay Stock Exchange, on 23rd of March, if you look at the statistics, that is the probably for more than 100 years, the stock market was not collapsed that much. So we do have the history. Now, one side, the unemployment, food industries, small scale industries, medium scale industries, all these people are drastically affected by this pandemic. So this is probably one of the biggest human catastrophe. Most of the economies across the globe, they are contracted by 25% already. So meaning that we pushed back ourselves by this virus, plus minus about 15 to 25 years. So we need to work extra harder. Even in the coming 2 years or 3 years down the line, our economy cannot be resurrected. It cannot be put back into the track to make it normal, to make it smooth and to continue. Probably about 5% growth rate. If you look at the global economy, it was contracted, though we have last year's statistics and before last year's statistics, the economy at the globe at which it has to grow is about 3.5%. But now it is diminished to 2.4%. So one can imagine that. So it is affecting not only a particular country like America or India or Brazil or Russia or South Africa, but every country in the world is significantly influenced by this virus. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think without taking much time, I just would like to conclude by stating that the current pandemic is not going to be permanent. We have the probably second waves and third wave, whatever the waves are coming, that is going to be remained with us for some time and maybe disappeared. So we hope that something, a miracle will happen. We get a vaccine, and eventually we can try to tackle this disease and we're back to the normal life. Otherwise, there are people living pathetic lives. India alone, for example, it has announced a bailout package of $266 billion. That is about plus minus 10% of the total income, total economy of India, to help the small scale businesses, to help the poor people, the migrant laborers who are suffering. More than 100 million migrant laborers, ladies and gentlemen, they have been suffered by this virus. State like Bihar, Uttar Pradesh, Jharkhand, Odisha, Rajasthan, all these state people, they migrated from different parts of India just for their survival. Now, all those people, they have to go back to their country, to their own villages, because they can't afford to live without job. They can't afford to live without basic needs, food, shelter, and etc. So, ladies and gentlemen, that really created a major turbulence for Indian economy as well. Now, the unemployment levels also, as I mentioned, is increased, and the savings Indians are good in savings actually. Whatever the amount of money that they've been saving for years together, they begin to spend that saving, hard earned life savings, they begin to spend because most of the people they are unemployed within the informal sector, etc. So this is it is teaching us some lesson. We need to learn from this lesson. We need to be more stronger, be more bold, more courageous, and we need to move on. We need to face this virus, ladies and gentlemen. So with this, probably I would like to conclude my session by thanking all the participants across the globe. There are participants from Zimbabwe, from Indonesia, from South Africa, from Swaziland, from Lesotho, from USA and India, and many other countries across the globe. But thank you very much for taking time to listen to me, and I hope that is you learned something from this. And I also would like to acknowledge and thank the International Association for the Academic as well as the Corporate, the president, Sai Chand, and one of the core members, Krishna, and many other probably the executive members of the organization are arranging this webinar. And I would like to conclude and thank you once again. And if you got any questions or comments, you please welcome to approach and you can raise, and then probably Krishna will ask the question. Then I try to address those questions. Thank you very much once again. Yes, please. Somebody, shall I request a question, sir? Please go ahead. You can ask the questions on the specific channel, probably how the standard of India can be realized. Okay. Well, ladies and gentlemen, I think that's a good question to just to begin with by stating that India is an amazing country. I'm not saying this because I come from India. We have proven to the world that in terms of the knowledge, wisdom, in terms of the yoga, in terms of cultural heritage, whatever we do together as human individuals, as a society, as Indians in general, we try to create some kind of difference. So Aryabhatta contributed zero, and with that zero, so most of the scientific discoveries, the technological inventions become possible today. So with that background, I would like to address your question that the standard of living in India, how it can be improved. Ladies and gentlemen, we know that we got independence probably about 73, 74 years ago. And this within this 74 years down the line, though we have achieved some major things for our country, but when we look at the people living below poverty line, as I mentioned about the migrant laborers, 100 million or more than 100 million migrant laborers, and there are people living very pathetic lives. Now, if you look at a slum area in South Africa, for example, and slum areas such as Bombay or major cities of Chennai and Delhi, there's a huge difference actually. People, they are sleeping on the roads, on the pavements, without having any proper shelters, toilets. So how the standard of living can be lifted? We are suffering with one major disease in India that is worse than the current pandemic, ladies and gentlemen. that is corruption. So corruption is the biggest disease that is deep rooted in India. That has to be eliminated. In order to improve the standard of living of the people, we need to attack, we need to address that corruption. We do have scandals, we have corruption everywhere from the small level to the big level. Although the current government is trying to manifest that they are doing better than the other governments, but still corruption remains as one of the critical problems in the country. Ladies and gentlemen, I gave you the example of Singapore. Singapore, such a tiny country, how it became one of the leading nations in the world, because they believed on three principles. One is honesty, second is pragmatism, and third is the right person should be appointed at the right place. So with those three strong principles, they could able to uplift their country in a very sustainable manner. So Singapore remains as one of the leading nations in the world. It's like a tiger, Asian tiger. But we couldn't able to improve the quality of life. Although we got 68, 70 years, that is the standard of living or life expectancy of Indians as of now. But we could have improved to 80 or beyond 80, like Japan or America or many other developed countries. But because we need to eliminate the corruptions. if we could able to attack that corruption problems, and then we could able to improve the standards. Thank you. There's other question. Ravi Kumar was asking that which are the other areas, tourism, manufacturing industries. Ladies and gentlemen, India is an agro-based economy. Now, most of our farmers, even in 1950s, when the 5-year plan started, first 5-year plan started, before and after, India remains as an agro-based economy. But nonetheless, now the structure of the economy, if you look at, more than 60% coming from the services, probably about 27, 28% coming from industries, and very little percentage coming from agriculture. Although still larger portion of our people are depending on agriculture. We need to improve the agriculture. We need to improve the agro-based industries. Today, the milk that is being sold in Indian market more than 50 rupees per liter. But it used to be sold for 10 rupees, 15 rupees, less than 20 rupees for many years. Now we have to grow farmers, though we are the largest producers of milk in the world, but still the milk became more costlier for our Indian people. So I suggest that we still need to embark a lot of reform strategies on agriculture sector, and we should make agriculture as a mainstay, because without agriculture, no other sectors, whatever they grow, they cannot be sustainable. It will be like top heavy and bottom weak. So therefore, we must make the bottoms stronger. So that bottom is agriculture sector. Ravi Kumar ji, I hope I answered that question. Thank you. Which are the sectors are concentrated to increase Indian GDP? Well, Dinesh Kumar, I think thank you for that question. Well, we can concentrate technology-based industries. For instance, for the past few months, if you look at, there is a resentment that has been developed for China due to the virus one side, due to their aggressive strategies on Hong Kong and India and Taiwan and Tibet and all other areas or small countries. So people begin to suspect and maybe look for alternative avenues for their investments. So I think that as a result of this, more than 800 dealings are being made in India And Apple company, which spent more than $250 billion in China in the form of investments, in the form of their companies in different ways. But the Apple company is trying to shift their investments to India. For instance, I think last month or so, the company already started maybe their foundation, their operations in Chennai, around Chennai. And so probably about $40 billion are going to be spent by Apple company. And Amazon is also, Zebizo visited India in the month of January. I think there was a picture that I've seen on Google or in one of the articles that on 21st of March, uh, sorry, 21st of January 2020, he visited Taj Mahal. He has taken a picture with his girlfriend. So what I'm saying is that Jeff Bezos also wants to spend more than $1 billion. Sundar Pichai also wants to spend probably significant amount of money in building some technology-based companies. They also want to support the Geo, the Mukesh Ambani's Geo networks, internets, and probably the wireless technologies and so on and so forth. So I think that is one of the areas that India can concentrate because there's a faster growth in technology-based industries. Now, nobody thought that within about 10 to 12 years period, uh, Facebook became the largest company in the world with about $1.8 trillion. So that is why I think my answer would be, Dinesh Kumar, for your question, that we need to focus more on the tech-based companies while we are working on the agriculture sector also side by side. Thank you. What would this mean to the countries who are already struggling, countries with the high levels of debt? Ephraim Abdel Mikhail is my colleague from Eritrea, one of the countries where I worked for a long time. And Ephraim, thank you very much for that question. Yes, the debt is yet another challenge. Because of interest of time, I couldn't cover the debt issue. Let me give you some brief insight about the debt. As I mentioned that we got $86.5 trillion as the total income of the world. But if you look at the debt statistics, Ephraim and ladies and gentlemen, that we got more than $255 trillion debt that are probably the whole world is been indulged into the debt. Now, Japan, as I mentioned, that it's one of the worst hit countries in terms of the debt. The percentage, if you look at the debt to GDP ratio of Japan, is more than 235%. So that is a bit of scary thing. Greece, 181%, and America, more than 100%. So that is not. South Africa, for example, we are reaching to 80% and more. So this is what is happening. And if you look at the average debt, as I mentioned, that we got a population of 7.8 billion people in this world. And if you look at that $255 trillion debt, if you take the average of every single person living in this world today, we all owe about $32,000. You and I, all the people we are sitting here, we owe $32,000. Many of us, ladies and gentlemen, we don't even earn $32,000 per year. How are we going to pay this? So this is a bigger challenge. But my suggestion would be that we need to stick to the standard economic principles that we shouldn't go debt to GDP ratio should not be more than 33%. So if we could able to regulate the debt, and no matter if we have major challenges, but we still try to regulate the debt. With otherwise, you keep on paying only the interest rates throughout your life, and many years to come, you don't even pay the principal amount. For example, the amount of money that was spent by UK, um, and UK was paying the debt that it has taken during the World War II until recently. So that's not a good sign, ladies and gentlemen. And so therefore, we need to restrict, and we need to financially, monetarily, in every aspect, we need to regulate ourselves. We need to discipline ourselves. That's my suggestion. Thank you, everyone. does have any impact on employment generation through small sectors in the current scenario? Yes, Jevaji Ajay, thank you for that question. Yeah, I think as I mentioned that the employment generation, you see, now we are badly hit by this virus. So we are being completely slowed down. We are standstill. In order for us to move, in order for us to walk, in order for us to run again, it will take some time. So it may take 10 years, it may take 15 years, but we will get back. So my answer would be for your question that we can still generate employment and we can still grow our economy more than 10%, but it will take a longer time than we anticipate. Thank you, Ajay. Daru Narayana, what could be the impact of automation on labor, employment, daily wage workers in India? Dr. Venkat Narayana. Dr. Venkat Narayana, thank you for that question. Well, now with the industrialization, we are suffering with this high levels of unemployment. Although India, for example, we used to have about a 6.7% unemployment rate. That is the standard unemployment last year, end of last year, or beginning of this year. But now the unemployment, according to the latest statistics by CIMEE, that is Center for Monitoring and Indian Economy, according to their survey, I think last week I read their report that says that we got more than 24% unemployment rate. So imagine in the few months period, the unemployment rates are climbing up. Now, in state like Telangana, for example, Telangana used to be one of the best performing states in the country, but now in Telangana itself is about 35% unemployment rate. So that is that Narayanji, that we do have this automation, the industrialization that that create a lot of unemployment situation as well. But we need to focus some of the industries where there are labor intensive. If there are companies such as Google and companies such as Apple and many other tech companies, or the airline industries also, they laid off thousands of people. Every month you will read a lot of news about this automation. The industrialization is pushing or creating more unemployed people. A lot of people got unemployed because of this robotic technologies. Let me also give you my experience that I was in Coimbatore in January this year. I think there was a conference, Avinash Lingam University. They invited me one of the as their one of their keynote speakers, and we went for a dinner. A robot was serving us our dinner actually. I mean, that is apathetic. And how many people, waitress, they lose their job with that? So automation definitely create unemployment, but that is probably in the short span of period. But in the long run, we need to create some strategies that can generate employment opportunities, despite the fact that there is automation, there is industrialization taking place side by side. Thank you, Narayan. Romeo, Romeo, my student, my PhD student, and you mentioned corruption as one of their major challenges facing most economies. Do you think that with the levels of corruption in Africa, could any African country ever become the world best economy? Romeo, thank you for that question. This is an interesting question, actually. You see, Africa generally, we got more than 55 countries in Africa. We have about 31 million square kilometers land. And Africa is considered to be the richest continent in the whole world. We got more than 55% of the gold deposits, close to 60% of the diamond deposits, and mica deposits, not mica, sorry, the platinum deposits, 75% of the platinum deposits of the whole world are centered in African continent, Romeo. Now, but we have corrupt leaders actually. We got Africa is famous for corruption, for scandals, for briberies. Now, with this kind of issues, it will be very difficult for us. Although we have Nigeria as one of the largest economy in the African continent, with more than $500 billion as the total income. South Africa used to be the largest economy. Now it is the second largest economy with about $380 billion. But now the challenge is that can we make an African country as one of the best economies in the world? We can make one of the best, but we cannot make the largest economy in the world. Maybe it takes another 500 years if any miracle happens in the African leadership, because African leaders are known for their selfish, ulterior motives that once they come to the power, they want to die while they are sitting in the chair as the president or the prime minister. So that is the biggest problem. And every single dollar that is been spent for the poor people, for the needy people, only 70 cents are being taken back by the leaders in the form of corruption, but only 30 cents are being spent by the poor people. So that is the biggest problem that we are sitting with. We're suffering with lack of skills, lack of knowledge, lack of dexterity, science, technology related matters. We are lagging behind. So it takes time. But my answer would be there could be some countries. There are emerging economies within Africa, like Kenya. We used to get Zimbabwe is one of the leading economies for more than 20 years back, but now no more. Now we have Angola on the other side, Ethiopia. So there are some emerging economies. They could be one of the good economies within African continent. They could be one of the model economies to the world, but they cannot become the largest economies. They cannot be the best economies as such. Thank you, Romeo. Is there any data for essay corruption? I think Nishu, thank you for that. Well, I think data is the biggest problem. That there was a think tank that our Northwest University Business School, we organize for every 2 to 3 weeks, we organize a session, and we invite the former premier of Northwest, and we invited some of the thought leaders, and we asked them to talk about the corruption probably a few days ago. But the challenge is that we do not have the a specific data. Actually, the data that was being generated on the corruption is not probably the clean data. It's not the reliable data as such. So my answer would be we do not have the perfect data as such, because people, those who are corrupted, they try to cover those things. That is why the data cannot come out. Thank you. Sai Chand, what about my micro personal position in the scale of national economy? Sai Chand, I think the in the context of India, for example, we do have millions of micro enterprises, and they play a major role actually in providing the employment opportunities to large number of people. Otherwise, India would have been suffered with one of the highest number of unemployment rates. Now, so the micro enterprises, for example, I was reading a report recently that we have MSMEs, that is medium scale micro enterprises. The number is more than the registered companies number is more than 60 millions actually. So that is more than the population of South Africa. The medium MSMEs we have in India is more than the population of South Africa actually. So definitely they could play their role in generating the employment, in providing the livelihood for the people who are depending on that informal businesses or formal businesses. Thank you, Sachin. So, ladies and gentlemen, I think it's about close to 1 hour 20 minutes. If you have one more question, I can take one more question. But if not, then so thank you very much. Yeah, from the Krishna. But thank you very much once again for asking and taking part in the deliberations by asking interesting questions. I really appreciate your precious time that you spare to listen to me. And I also thank again the organizing uh, committee of IAAC Society of, to organize to arrange this particular webinar. Thank you, Krishna, and thank you everyone once again.